The first 5 episodes of Kevin Smith's Masters of the Universe Revelation are behind us. He is off filming Clerks Part 3, so you'd think he wouldn't be able to do any more damage until the final 5 episodes are released at some point. Well, Smith and his partners in crime found a way. In addition to the Netflix series itself, there is a prequel comic, and so far 2 issues have been released. And that's all they needed to deconstruct and subvert none other than Skeletor himself. In this video, I'll begin by going through Skeletor's original origin story and how it has changed over the years, but nonetheless kept its core elements. Then I'll contrast that with Skeletor's new Revelation origin, and how it can't even stay internally consistent between the Netflix series and the prequel comic. From a storytelling perspective, He-Man and the Masters of the Universe has a somewhat unique point of entry in that it started out as a toy line, which was visually heavily inspired by, among other things, various Conan the Barbarian imagery, most notably by Frank Frazetta. No one cared too much about the story in the earliest of days. It was all about the designs and imagery. The story was Frankensteined together by several different writers scattered across minicomics and regular DC comics, before Filmation came up with a Bible for the series. Only it didn't end there. The story was retold and expanded upon in the 2000X series. And then everything that had come before was kind of merged in the canon for the Classics line of toys. That's a long-winded way of saying everyone from He-Man to Teela to Skeletor have seen their backstory and origin change multiple times over the years, although most of the changes happened in the early days of the franchise. But through all of those changes, the different people in charge have found different paths towards stringing everything together in ways that respect all past iterations. Case in point, Skeletor. In his very first appearances, Skeletor was a demon from another dimension, hailing from a planet full of skull-faced people like himself. But in one of the final minicomics of the classic era, The Search for Keldor, Skeletor is concerned with keeping the secret of what happened to Keldor, King Randor's long-lost brother. The writer of that comic later confirmed that that secret was that Keldor had gone to that other dimension, where he somehow had been transformed and returned as Skeletor. This way, the original origin had been partially kept, partially retconned, and all-out expanded upon. We first saw Keldor in the 2000X series. It was embellished that Skeletor's mother was a member of the minority of blue-skinned Gar people, just like Cyclone and Trapjaw. She was the mistress of King Miro, Randor's father, and Keldor is the elder brother at that. The throne of Eternia is arguably his birthright. But since he was a blue-skinned half-breed son of a concubine, he would never sit on his father's throne. That's some epic motivation right there. Fighting Randor, Keldor sustained burns to his face and life-threatening injuries, and was only saved by Hordak, who was himself trapped in another dimension. But salvation came at a heavy price. Keldor's whole head was turned into a floating skull, as Skeletor is a creation of magic. For the later Classics toy line, it was embellished that what Hordak actually did was merge Keldor with Demo Man, in reality the original sketch for Skeletor, and that the new joint creature became Skeletor. After the merge, Skeletor was a bit confused and thought he came from a planet full of Skeletors, but eventually, the Keldor part of the personality won out, leaving Skeletor with full memories of his earlier life. This way, all earlier iterations of Skeletor's origin were respected, while emphasizing that Skeletor was always Keldor. Leave it to Kevin Smith to mess that up too. To tie in with the Netflix series, Dark Horse are publishing a prequel comic book miniseries. 2 are credited with the story, namely Kevin Smith and Mattel's Rob David. The actual writer of this comic, though, is Tim Sheridan. The overarching story is about some space squid thingy, and this then leads to a flashback sequence in which Skeletor relays his origin story to Evelyn. In the Revelation continuity, it would appear that Keldor has been discarded, as here, Skeletor was always Skeletor, and he comes from the planet Apollonios. That is a planet of Skeletors, as in, everyone there have skulls for heads, connected through fleshy necks. But while this is a planet of Skeletors, these are no demons, just regular people with weird skin colors and skulls for heads. They have no magical powers, and they even live a life in servitude under the ruling Ram people. But one Skeletor rises and takes down the oppressors. This is our Skeletor, the champion of Apollonios, just like He-Man is the champion of Eternia. Being the celebrated hero of his people, Skeletor finds himself a beautiful skull-faced Skeletor woman, whom he impregnates, and together they have a beautiful little skull-faced Skeletor daughter. And I'm sorry if this is sounding sarcastic. I know it's meant to be profound with the skull and ram imagery and all, but I can't help but feel this reads like a Robot Chicken skit. Skeletor having a Skeletor kid with a Skeletor woman is just a hard sell for me. Anyway, you see where this is headed. The Ram people return, and since Skeletor didn't keep his identity a secret, which is a recurring theme in this miniseries, they come for him and for his family. In the best Punisher style, this is where Skeletor's family leaves the story. A broken and defeated Skeletor then meets Hordak, a conquering space villain. Hordak introduces Skeletor to magic and promises him revenge over the Ram people, and in best Palpatine tempting Anakin Skywalker style, Hordak teases the restoration of Skeletor's family in the fullness of time. All Skeletor has to do is sell out his planet to Hordak. Skeletor agrees and kneels in servitude. From the severed head of one of the vanquished Ram people, Skeletor makes his Havoc Staff, which Hordak imbues with magic. Hordak eventually does bring back Skeletor's daughter, who right away has to enter service in Hordak's army. But Hordak doesn't bring back Skeletor's wife, and Skeletor figures out he never will. He can do it himself though, all he needs is the power of Grayskull. So that then is why Skeletor is so hell-bent on getting that. Or is he? Remember, Skeletor was relaying this story to Evelyn. She doesn't believe him, and so he admits to her that he made it all up. But the audience is led to believe it was all true all along. Or is it? Maybe like the Joker, the Skeletor's origin is multiple choice. Me, I don't like that. I prefer the established canon Keldor story of the past 3 decades. And make no mistake about it, there are no rights issues preventing them from using that. Changing it up a little bit, like they did in the DC comics, would be all that was required. This was a creative choice, and honestly, a poor one. If they were going back to Skeletor coming from a planet of Skeletors, they might as well bring back that He-Man was a Conan-style barbarian who left his tribe looking for adventure. But be that as it may, what is extra frustrating in all of this is that this prequel comic to the Netflix series doesn't even line up with the Netflix series. They couldn't even keep that straight. In the Netflix series, Skeletor told Andra that his skull face had given him a lonely life, since no woman would have him as a man. Which is a most out-of-character complaint for Skeletor, but anyway, let's just accept that in the Netflix series, Skeletor is a lonely and bitter incel. Then how is it that in the canon prequel to that series, where Kevin Smith himself has story credit, not only did Skeletor have a wife, he still misses her and is trying to get her back? Given that setup, he's not even going to look for another woman, so why complain to Andra that no woman will have him? They apparently forgot to tell the writer of the comic about that. If so, I'm jealous of him, because I would like to forget that too, but that's me. What about you? Which origin story for Skeletor do you prefer, and what do you think about the new one? Let me know in the comments.